What if the rain wasn't rain at all? What if it soaked your skin and then soaked into your mind? Oakville, British Columbia. August 7, 1994. The day the sky bled something wrong. Something the government never explained. Something no one survived unchanged. The first thing I remember was the sound. It wasn't thunder. It was closer. Like breath rattling above the trees. I was 12 when it started. We were at the kitchen table. Me, my brother Nolan, and Mom. Was early? Too early for a storm. But outside, the clouds had gone solid black. No warning, no wind. Just a sky that collapsed on itself. And then, it began to fall. Not rain. Not hail. Something else. Thick, jelly-like, translucent, with veins running through it. Gray, like tissue. Mom screamed first. The stuff was sliding down the windows. Sticking to the glass. Nolan ran out the door before she could stop him. I remember her voice trembling. Don't touch it. Please, don't let it touch your skin. But it was too late. We all went outside eventually. Because the whole village did. Everyone wanted to know what it was. Some thought it was pollution. Some said it was gelatin from a plane. But that doesn't explain why. Why the dogs howled until their lungs gave out. Why birds started slamming into houses. Why half the town collapsed into fever by nightfall. I kept hearing something, in the walls. Whispers almost, but in a voice that sounded like Nolan's. Except, he wasn't home anymore. He was in the hospital. They said it was a viral reaction. But his eyes kept moving even in a coma. Like he was seeing something, on the ceiling. Something we couldn't. I asked Mom, do you think it's the rain? She didn't answer. She just stared outside. At the sky. As if waiting for it to fall again. My grandfather used to talk about this place. Said the land was too quiet. He told me once. The forest remembers, and sometimes it spits back. We thought he was being poetic. But he wasn't. Because the jelly didn't just fall once. It came back, every year. Same week. Same night. Same weather. And here's the worst part. Everyone who touched it, even once, started changing. Subtle things at first. Dreams they couldn't wake up from. Nosebleeds. Screaming in their sleep. And then, they started disappearing. But not the way you think. Not from homes. Not from the woods. From photographs. From memories. We still have a picture of Nolan's birthday. But in every copy now, his face is blurry. Smudged like someone wiped him away. Like he was never real. And tonight? It's raining again. The same color. The same sound. But now, there's something inside the rain. I saw it move. I saw it breathe. Whatever Oakville buried. It's waking up. What if your fever had a voice? Not just heat. Not just hallucinations. But words. Whispers. Crawling beneath your skin. Oakville didn't just get sick. It began to speak through its victims. And the language? Wasn't human. 3 days after the rain. Half the village was bedridden. They called it a viral outbreak. Doctors came in hazmat suits. They closed the schools. Blocked the main road. Airspace was suddenly restricted. But what the doctors didn't tell us was that every patient, no matter their age, was murmuring the same phrase, again and again, in a language no one recognized. And they said it, in unison. Even the babies. Even the ones who couldn't talk yet. I stayed by Nolan's bed every night. He was still unconscious. His body burning from the inside out. But his mouth kept moving. I leaned in once. Just to hear it. He whispered. They came before sound. The breathless ones. They remember the name. What name? I shook him, begged him to wake up. But all he did was smile. A twisted, crooked, unnatural kind of smile. Like it didn't belong on his face. Mom refused to sleep. She kept her eyes on the door. As if she expected something to come through it. And when I asked her what was wrong, she just said, it's happening again. Just like in '54. I didn't understand what she meant. Until I found her journal. Buried under loose floorboards in her closet. It was old. Covered in dust and dried out leaves. The first page? A black and white photo. 6 children in hospital gowns. I scratched out. My mom was one of them. She had written in shaky red ink. Only 3 of us survived. The rain took the rest. But the voice never left us. She knew. She always knew. That same night, Nolan's eyes snapped open, and he screamed. But not in pain. In rage. It took 2 nurses to hold him down. But the way he looked at me, that wasn't my brother. That wasn't anyone. He started reciting something. Fast. Like a chant. He said it in that same guttural voice everyone else had. But then, he laughed. That's what broke me. Not the sickness, not the jelly rain, but hearing my baby brother laugh like a stranger, with someone else's voice, using words I couldn't understand, but somehow feared anyway. The doctors didn't call it language. They called it linguistic deterioration. They blamed fever swelling in the brain. But I watched, and it wasn't random. It was structured. The syllables repeated in threes. And sometimes, if you listen long enough, you'd start hearing the same words in your dreams. That's when I stopped sleeping. Because I started hearing it even when I was awake. In faucets, in the walls, in the trees. There was something beneath Oakville. Something that used voices like skin. Something that remembered us. And then it happened. One of the nurses, she locked herself in the supply room, wrote on the walls, all over the walls. In her own blood. They come through water. They eat memory. They hate the name we forgot. Then she gouged her ears. With a fork. To silence it. When they found her, she was laughing too. Just like Nolan. Just like everyone else. That night, I asked Mom, what happened in 1954? She looked at me and whispered the name. Ashara. She said it was the thing before the village. Before the roads. Before the people. And then she told me the worst part. It's not a virus. It's a calling. And once you hear it, you never stop. Not even after you're buried. What if the oldest thing in your town wasn't a tree or a building, but a voice? A voice trapped beneath the ground, waiting, humming, feeding on silence. In Oakville, the rain was just the beginning. What came next came from below. It started with the soil. Black, wet, and warm. The earth behind St. Felix's Church began to bubble. Not with gas, but with sound. A low vibration, like something moaning, but rhythmic. Like breath, but deeper. Too deep to be human. People thought it was the pipes, or the ground thawing, until the caretaker vanished. His name was Ivan. He wasn't even from Oakville. Just a man filling in for a sick pastor. I spoke to him the day before he disappeared. He looked pale, sweating, kept scratching his arms, like something was under his skin. He whispered, "There's something breathing down there, and it's remembering my name." I laughed it off, told him he needed rest. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I already died once. This place brought me back, and now it wants the rest." That was the last time anyone saw him. Oakville has no graveyard. You won't find any tombstones. Not officially. But in 1906, the original settlers built St. Felix's on top of an ancient pit. They called it a blessing well. Locals were told it was sacred. Only, it wasn't used for prayers. It was used for containment. And the older generation? They never drank the water. They used it to wash away sin. Literally. Bodies that didn't deserve to be buried were lowered into that well. It was their punishment. But what if the dead don't stay quiet? What if the forgotten, remember? 2 days after Ivan vanished, the ground behind the church collapsed. I went with Mom. She used to sing in that church before she quit. Before the thing in the rafters, as she called it. The crater behind the chapel was deep. Too deep. And in the center? Well, old stone. Covered in ash markings. Rusted chain coiled like a serpent over the edge. But no bucket. Just air. And the hum. It wasn't a sound you heard with your ears. You felt it. In your ribs. Your teeth. Your spine. The longer I stood there, the more I wanted to jump. That's when Mom grabbed me by the arm and whispered, terrified, "That's how it calls. You don't fall. You follow." That night, 4 more people went missing. 2 children. 1 postman. And a woman who just moved to town. No screams. No signs of struggle. They were there, and then they weren't. But here's what tied them all together. Every one of them had visited St. Felix's in the past 3 days. And more importantly, every one of them had touched the earth near the well. That same night, I dreamt of Ivan. Only it wasn't a dream. He was at the edge of my bed. Naked. Wet. Pale as chalk. Gone. But he spoke. His mouth didn't move. But I heard it, inside my skull. It's not a well. It's a mouth. And now that it's fed, it wants to speak. I woke up screaming. And there, on my pillow, was a coin. Hand-carved. Stamped with the words, "Do not listen." The town tried to cover it up. Filled the hole with cement. Built a fence. Posted warnings about unstable ground. But it didn't stop the humming. And it didn't stop the people from vanishing. Because now, the well was humming through them. Mom started humming in her sleep, low and slow. She didn't even notice. And when I played her the recording, she screamed and smashed my phone. Before locking herself in the basement and writing symbols on the walls with charcoal. She wouldn't let me see. She just kept muttering, "Don't hum back. That's how it knows you're listening." That night, it rained again. And the rain smelled different. Like rust. And burnt feathers. And something ancient. I went outside to cover the windows. But I stopped. Because I could hear it. The hum. Coming from beneath the ground. Coming from everywhere. And worst of all, from inside my own mouth. I was humming. And I didn't remember starting. What if a single word could change your life? But not in the way you think? Not love. Not hope. Not faith. But a name. Whispered in dreams. Carved into wood. And once you speak it aloud, something hears you. In Oakville, this name was never meant to be remembered. But now it's everywhere. I didn't mean to say it. It slipped out. Between breaths. Like it had been waiting on my tongue. Ashara. I had heard it before. In Nolan's hospital whispers. In my mother's journal. In Ivan's chant from the shadows. But I never understood it. Not until the moment it passed through my lips. And the air around me froze. It wasn't cold. It was still. Like the world was holding its breath. Waiting. The second I said it, the lights flickered. The humming from the well grew louder. Sharper. And then, everything around me felt wrong. My shadow didn't move with me. My reflection blinked too late. Even the clocks in the house reset themselves to 3:03 a.m. I ran to Mom. But she was already at the door. Pale. Shaking. And scribbling the name onto our front wall over and over again. "Once you remember it," she said, "you become it." Back in 1954, the same name showed up in the town's lost records. I found a torn article hidden in the local library basement. Yellowed and faded, it read, "Mass hallucination at St. Felix. Town recites ancient word in sleep. Every single resident, adults, children, newborns, murmured the same phrase for 11 nights straight." The article never printed the word. But in red pen across the margin, someone had scrawled, "Don't write it. Don't say it. Don't dream it." But that warning came too late for Oakville. Just like it came too late for me. The next morning it was everywhere. Painted in red on stop signs. Carved into the bark of birch trees. Burned into mailboxes. Children sang it as if it were a nursery rhyme. Neighbors spoke it without realizing. And each time someone said it, something changed. The lights dimmed. Insects died. Water stopped running for exactly 13 seconds. It was like the village itself was reacting. As if every spoken syllable unlocked another layer of Oakville. One not built by humans. That's when people began to vanish. Again. Not in their beds. Not in the woods. They disappeared in public. Mid-sentence. Mid-step. Mid-conversation. One woman was holding her child's hand in the grocery store. And the child disappeared. Leaving nothing but melted rubber footprints on the tile. Another man was seen saying the name aloud into a mirror. His reflection smiled. And pulled him in. Only his glasses remained. I tried recording the name. But every time I played it back, there was no sound. Just static. And breathing. Heavy. Close. Almost. Behind me. And that night, I dreamed of a house I'd never seen. A crooked one built backwards. Doors on the roof. Windows underground. In every room, someone sat with their mouth sewn shut. Except one. The figure in the corner. It looked like me. But older. Paler. Smiling wide. And it whispered, "Now you know. But do you remember why you forgot?" I woke up choking on my pillow. Mom stopped calling me by my name. She just stared. Sometimes she called me Ashara. Sometimes she called me it. Nolan started speaking again. But it wasn't English. He drew circles on the walls. Inside each one, the name, over and over, but written backwards. As if trying to lock it away. When I asked him what it meant, he cried. Then whispered, "It's not a name. It's a location. And it's almost here." And that's when it hit me. The name wasn't just infecting people. It was rewriting them. One by one. Taking faces, voices, memories. The more we said it, the more we ceased to exist as we were. And the worst part? It wasn't just in Oakville anymore. I got a message from someone in Vancouver. Then Toronto. Then Glasgow. Each one a photo. Of the name. Carved on trees. In places far away. It had started spreading. Like a virus. But ancient. Deliberate. Like something had waited centuries to be remembered. The power's been flickering for hours. Outside it's raining again. But not water. Thick. Warm. Smells like copper. And under the thunder, I swear I can hear it. A voice whispering from the earth, calling my name. But not the one I was born with, the one it gave me. Ashara. What if the only way to survive was to forget? But what happens to the ones who remembered anyway? In Oakville, 3 survivors lived through the 1954 incident. Their minds fractured. Their bodies never left. But their memories? They remember Ashara. And now they're ready to talk. Or scream. It was Sheriff Darnell who first said it aloud. He called them the Quiet Three. 3 survivors hidden in the north wing of Oakville Mental Health Center. Locked away since 1954. No visitors. No records. And no birth certificates. He said they were found kneeling around a church altar. Mouths sewn shut. Fingernails filed to bone. Their only crime? They spoke a name they weren't supposed to know. Now I knew the name too. So I had to find them. The center was just a brick shadow behind a rusted fence. No signs. No reception. Only a door. And a silence that buzzed like power lines over wet skin. Inside, the nurse didn't ask questions. She just led me down a hallway that got colder with each step. Each room had a number. No names. Just numbers. But then we stopped at room 13. And the door? It had the word carved deep into the wood. Ashara. Inside were 3 figures. Still. Unmoving. Like wax statues warped by heat. An old woman named Miriam. A man with cloudy eyes, Stefan. And the third, no name given. But her mouth was still sewn shut. Fresh thread. As if someone wanted her to stay silent. Miriam was the only one who spoke. Barely. Her voice cracked like old paper. But her words hit like hammers. They tried to erase it. They burned the books. Killed the linguist. Bricked over the well. But names don't die. I asked her what Ashara was. She shook her head. Not what. When. Ashara is not a place. It's a moment. And it's coming again. Miriam began to unravel the truth. In 1954, a missionary came to Oakville with a book he'd stolen from a remote chapel in northern Quebec. He read from it during Mass, trying to translate an unreadable page. The moment he spoke the word, the sky darkened, birds fell from trees, and every person in that church lost part of their memory. But here's what they remembered before forgetting. A voice, speaking from beneath the floorboards, promising healing, promising eternal clarity. They dug. They found bones, stacked in spirals, some still warm. They called the spiral, the mouth. But by then, the damage was done. Ashara had been named again. Stefan hadn't spoken in decades. But suddenly he turned. His eyes rolled back. And his hands trembled like antennae searching for signal. He whispered in a voice too young for his age. The clocks will skip a beat. When you hear the wind breathing, run. Then he began banging his head against the wall. Miriam screamed. The nurse tried to sedate him, but he muttered. It only takes 3, saying it together, for it to come through. I stood frozen. Because earlier that day at the coffee shop, I'd heard 3 strangers jokingly chant the name together. Just once. Just once. The lights in the room dimmed. A humming noise started again. But this time it didn't come from the well. It came from inside the vents. Then the door slammed shut. All 3 survivors stood now. Eyes wide. Arms raised. As if pulled by strings. And they spoke in unison. Ashara will not come for the dead. It only feeds on the remembering. Then the girl with the sewn mouth. She cut the thread with her teeth. Blood gushed, but she smiled. And said, You're its mouth now. Go speak the end. I ran from that place. Drove until my fingers cramped on the wheel. Cried until my vision blurred. But the worst part wasn't what I'd seen. It was what I saw when I got home. My mother. Sitting in Nolan's room. Rocking. Whispering. 3 said it today, and the clock skipped. And behind her, every mirror in the house had cracked inward. Like something had screamed from the other side. I turned on the news. Every station was offline. Except one. A live stream. Flickering. Blurry. A man sitting in a dark room. Whispering. Say it. Say it loud. Let the mouth open wide. I shut it off. But too late. Because now I feel it. In my teeth. In my bones. A hunger. A pressure. A name that's not just in my head anymore. But on my tongue. And it's waiting. What if time wasn't broken, but rearranged? What if your clock ticked forward, but your body didn't follow? What if you opened your eyes, and the world was suddenly 2 days older, without you in it? In Oakville, the rain twisted the air. The name twisted the mind. But now, time itself is twisting. And not everyone will come back from where it's going. I woke up at 4:07 a.m. I thought I did. The room felt off, like gravity was leaning sideways. My ceiling fan was spinning backward, and every clock in the house said something different. 4:07, 9:22, 13:13, 0:00. The digital one blinked furiously. Not numbers, but letters. Remember US. I blinked, and it was gone. I looked down at my phone. July 15th. Only, it should have been July 12th. 3 entire days, missing. I rushed into Nolan's room. Empty. The drawings on his walls were gone. So was Mom. But her bed was still warm. On her pillow, a post-it note written in thick red marker. Time's bleeding. Don't trust the sun. It's lying. I checked my phone again. Photos, erased. Call logs, blank. One voicemail, just heavy breathing. Then a whisper. Time skipped, because it needs room. I dropped the phone, because the voice was mine. I thought back to what Miriam said in the asylum. Ashara is not a place. It's a moment. What if this was it? What if every time someone said the name, it fractured something? Ripped a seam in time just wide enough to leak through? And now, the seams were giving way. People in town began reporting missing time. 10 minutes here, an hour there, until it became days. A teacher forgot his entire semester. A newborn aged 3 years overnight. And a girl named Leah? She woke up in the future. Only no one remembered her. I found Leah by accident. She was standing outside the library, covered in dirt, barefoot, blank stare. I asked her if she was okay. She turned to me and said, I died 2 nights ago. But this version of me doesn't know it yet. She said the clocks skipped right before it happened. She was at home, brushing her hair. Then blackness. And when she opened her eyes, it was August. And her house? Abandoned. Boarded shut. No one remembered her family. Her name. Not even the town records. Oakville had erased her. Leah told me something else. Something I still can't unhear. The clocks don't just skip. They pulse. Like breathing. And every time they do, someone disappears. That's when I noticed it. At 3:03 a.m. sharp. The world went silent. Birdsong vanished. Engine stalled. Even the humming from the well stopped. Then I saw it. The ripple. Across the street. Like heat waves but in the air. And where it touched things, time folded. A street lamp shattered in reverse. A squirrel paused mid-run, then exploded into dust. A woman watering her garden froze. Her body aging forward until her bones collapsed in the chair. The ripple kept moving. And everything behind it? Gone. Like it had never been there. I ran. Not away, but toward it. Because part of me needed to know. Why me? Why am I still here when the town is bleeding people? I reached the town's war memorial. Only now it had a new plaque. Fresh. Polished. In memory of those who never existed. Names I'd never seen before. Dates that didn't make sense. One stood out. Leah D. 2008? I turned. And Leah was gone. Like she was never there at all. That night, I found a journal wedged behind the furnace. It wasn't mine. But it had my handwriting. Each page. A different date. July 11th. July 13th. July 15th. July 19th. Even today's date, July 21st, already written. I flipped ahead. July 22nd, don't look at the clock. July 23rd, the church doors will open. Don't go inside. July 24th, if you say the name again, you'll never return. My head spun. I was reading entries I hadn't written yet. As if another version of me was still out there. Looping. Writing. Trying to warn me. But failing. At exactly 3:03 a.m. I felt it. My teeth clenched. My spine arched. My ears filled with static. And then, silence. Total silence. The room around me flickered. Just for a second. And in the reflection of my TV, I saw someone else in the room. Someone who looked like me. But older. Tired. Bleeding from the mouth. They whispered, "You said it again." And then, everything went black. What if a building could remember you? What if it watched you grow up? Waited for you to come back? And when the doors finally opened, it recognized your voice? In Oakville, it all ends where it began. The church. The rain. The name. Ashara. And the last question left is whether you'll leave alive. The doors to St. Felix opened on a Sunday. No one unlocked them. No one approached. They just opened, slowly, silently, like jaws unhinging. I stood across the street, alone. Because by now most of Oakville was gone. Some vanished in their sleep. Others aged out of time. And the rest? They just stopped being remembered. Their homes were still there. Cars and driveways. But when I asked people, no one knew their names. Not even their families. As if the town itself had wiped its memory, except for mine. I had no reason to go in. Except that I couldn't not. My dreams led me here. My blood pulled me here. And in the silence, I heard her again, Miriam's voice. It ends where it started. But the ending is a circle. So I stepped inside. The church was colder than outside. But not with air. It was cold like something had paused here. Like time itself had stopped breathing. The pews were overturned. The altar was cracked down the middle. And hanging above it was a pulsing mass of black roots, dripping water onto the marble. Each drop echoed like a scream. I walked toward the altar and ran my fingers along the carvings. Not crosses. Not verses. But names. Thousands of them, etched deep into the stone. Some I recognized. Leah. Miriam. Nolan. Ivan. And then I saw my own. Twice. One was fading. The other, burning itself in. That's when I realized, the church didn't just remember the past. It was rewriting it. One name at a time. One version of me at a time. Because Ashara didn't want death. It wanted memory. To wear us. To echo our voices like sermons. Forever. Behind the altar there was a door. Not visible. Until I said the name again. Quiet. Barely a whisper. Ashara. The stone shimmered. Melted. And the door opened. It wasn't wood. It was bone. Inside was a stairwell that spiraled downward. The air smelled like blood-soaked paper and burnt feathers. I descended. Every step pulsed under my feet, like walking on a sleeping creature's spine. At the bottom, the room. Round. Silent. Lit only by the glowing symbols on the walls. And in the center, a pool. Not water. But it moved like it was breathing. The pool shimmered. And then I saw them. Faces. All the lost ones. Nolan. Leah. My mother. Myself. Dozens of me. Older. Younger. Some weeping. Some smiling. All trapped in the ink. They looked up. Reached out. And I heard them. Inside my skull. You were the mouth. Now you must decide. Speak us back, or let us fade. Ashara was not a demon. Not a god. It was a consciousness made from memory. Every time the name was spoken, it awakened. It needed us to remember. To feed it. And I was its final vessel. The last one who still remembered. My hand hovered over the pool. If I touched it, I could bring them back. Rewrite them. I could walk away. Let it all be forgotten. Let Ashara starve. But would that make me a murderer? Or a savior? Tears streamed down my face. I whispered, "You don't deserve to wear their names." And I turned to walk away. That's when the walls started screaming. Not in sound, but memory. They flashed images. The day Nolan was born. Mom's laughter in the kitchen. Leah at the library. If I walked away, they would all be gone. But if I stayed, I would never leave. I stepped forward. Touched the ink. It didn't burn. It didn't sting. It welcomed me. Like it had waited my whole life. The voices grew louder. But they weren't screaming now. They were singing. A lullaby from no language I knew. But I understood it. And in that moment, I remembered everything. Every skipped time. Every dream. Every person who vanished. They weren't taken. They were recorded. In the ink. In the roots. In the walls of St. Felix. Ashara never killed. It kept. And now, so would I. I never left the church. At least, not in the way you think. The townspeople say it's abandoned. Rotten. Condemned. But sometimes, at 3:03 a.m., you'll hear the doors creak open. A voice humming from inside. Telling the story. My story. Because someone has to remember. Or it all happens again. And if you're hearing this now, that means it's your turn. To choose. Forget me. Forget Oakville. Forget the name. Or speak it. And let the story begin again. Do you think they were preserved, or possessed? Was Ashara mercy, or madness? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret, because even stories you forget, remember you.